Welcome everyone to NCEA's Implementing Research-Based Instructional Strategies webinar. My name is Kate Reich and I am on hand today to help with any technical questions that you may have. Before we begin the presentation, I do have some housekeeping matters to share with you. First, please know that all of your microphone connections with today's webinar have been muted. During the presentation, you may ask questions or provide comments for the presenter by using the chat and/or question functions located in the GoToWebinar panel on the right side of your screen, or by signing into todaysmeet.com/Marzano and the number 9. If you wish to ask questions or make comments using the GoToWebinar question function, click on the question bubble, click into the blank box area, and enter your question using your keyboard, and then click Send. I just sent a message through the chat feature with the Today's Meet link, and we certainly invite you to join the conversation online as well. The webinar presentation will run for 45 to 50 minutes, leaving some time at the end for the presenter to answer any questions that you provide. Third, today's webinar will feature 2 polls. To answer the poll questions, use your mouse to make your selection, then click Submit. Fourth, you will be asked to complete a brief evaluation at the end of this webinar, and your feedback is greatly appreciated. Lastly, this webinar is being recorded, and you will all receive a copy of the final recorded webinar that we will email to you once the recorded files are available. I'm very pleased to present Kathy Mears, Executive Director of NCEA's Elementary Schools Department. Kathy comes to the NCEA from the Archdiocese of Indianapolis, where she was the Assistant Superintendent for Catholic Schools. She has been both a presenter and a principal in Catholic elementary schools and brings extensive experience in special education, public policy, school improvement programs, and professional development. Kathy hosted a webinar in December of 2013, which sort of set the stage for Marzano's instructional strategies, and this webinar is a continuation from that event. Thank you very much, and I'll introduce Kathy.
Unmuted. Thank you very much. I appreciate the kind introduction, and thank you for being such a good organizer. Welcome, everyone. I'm glad that you're here. I need to give a special shout out to my friends in California. I think their principal's name is Carol, and what I understand is that when I present at 4 o'clock Pacific time, they have wine and cheese. So I don't know about the rest of you, wherever you're at, but in California and San Francisco, Carol and her faculty are having wine and cheese at this moment. So thank you for doing that, Carol, because whatever it takes to engage people, we're all for it. If anybody else is doing wine or cheese or whatever, please let me know in Today's Meet. We'd love to hear from you. The Today's Meet site is listed right there, so it's todaysmeet.com/Marzano9, and I hope that you'll join us there. So what are our goals for today? Well, we want you to leave with strategies because that's what you want. So hopefully you'll be able to walk away from this webinar with some strategies. We also want you to know that these strategies are all ones that you can use when completing those forms for having a child evaluated for special education services. The question is usually what best practices or what research-based strategies have you used. Everything I'm giving you tonight, if you use it, they're research-based. It meets that criteria. We also want you to have hopes of increasing your student engagement, and again, we believe that these strategies will do that. So let's start with a poll. We're going to compare your work now to what you replied in December. So looking at all of Marzano's strategies listed there, those 9 strategies, could you please let us know if you use them every day, if you use them every week, or if you rarely use these strategies? And we will compare your results with the results that we had in December when we gave this poll. And we're hoping that there's been some growth. There was in the 4 o'clock group, so I'm sure the 7 o'clock group is just as good. Okay, I think if Kate can close the poll now. That's a pretty easy poll. It doesn't usually take that much time. in December using these strategies once every day or one time a day. 43% of you were saying that. 48% were using them every week, and 9% rarely use these strategies. Right now we're at 8% rarely for this group, so that's good. We're down a little bit. And a whopping 71% use them once per week. That is excellent. So thank you. That's good, and we hope that we can add a few more strategies to your repertoire today. So we're going to start with that identifying similarities and differences. We talked about hula hoops. I got the most feedback about the hula hoops idea from the last webinar they did. Anything else? So if you're using hula hoops, that is great. But how else can we do that, identifying similarities and differences? Well, one way to do it is to guide the students with questions so that they learn to ask these questions of themselves, that they direct their own learning because they know to ask these questions. So the two basic questions, how are they alike, how are they different? And that's what we do with younger children, but all children can start there, adults can start there. But then we need to go forward. You might ask them, when might you use one of these? You might ask them, does it matter how these crosses are constructed, the materials that are used? There's all kinds of questions we could ask. That's part of your job as a teacher, is to ask questions. So we're going to ask that you go to today's Meet or use the chat box and type in a question that you might ask about these 5 crosses, or 4 crosses, I'm sorry. The first one with a circle one was actually made by preschoolers. Each preschooler at a school in Florida made those during Catholic Schools Week. They did a very awesome job. The second cross is on top of a rural church. The third cross is one made for the 100th day of school, 100 questions for Jesus. I think that's a pretty cool idea. And then the last one is traditional, something we see during Lent, something you may see beginning tomorrow with Ash Wednesday. So looking at those 4 pictures of crosses, what are some questions you might ask children to get them to compare and contrast? The last group asked about, would it matter what materials? The last group said, how does the shape stay the same? Some people said they're having some lag and load issues. I don't know, Kate, if you can do anything to help, but that's on today's Meet. Connor said, Connor, you're back. I'm glad to see you're back. Connor said, what emotions do the crosses make you think of? I think that's good because they do evoke different emotions. The one that the preschool children make almost looks happy, as opposed to the one that is more of a traditional Lenten season vignette of a cross with the bare bushes underneath it and the purple cloth hanging from it. What purposes were these crosses created by the different people who made them? That's a very good question too. And again, we want children to question things. Questioning is a good thing, and we're digging deep on that compare-contrast by asking them to form their own questions. So you can start there and ask the children what their own questions are. Last session, somebody said one of the questions that they might ask their children, is it okay to make a cross out of Post-it notes? Is that okay? How does the shape really change when we add the design that you see with the cross that's on the church? It has a very intricate cut-out laser design of wood around it. Does that really change the shape of the cross? Does it change the meaning of the cross? So those are all questions that we could ask. And again, when they go to think about, does that change the meaning of the cross because it has this beautiful design around it, then they're going to compare that cross to the one that's maybe plain. Or they could compare the 2 handmade ones, and does it matter? It leads to great discussion and a great way to identify similarities and differences. Here's the next thing about identifying similarities and differences. For a lot of what we want children to do, we want them to make connections, build relationships, discover relationships between concepts, between words. So I just typed in some words, basically any words I could think of that might have to do with church, religion, Lent. And what I would do is I would give these words to the students and I would ask them to classify them. I would ask them to place them into categories. Here's the catch. I'm not going to tell them how many categories there are. I'm not going to give them the criteria. I want them to do the work. So if I sit there as teacher saying, oh, I want 3 categories. We'll have one for people, we'll have one for the things you do during lunch, and then one miscellaneous. If I do all that work, I've taken all the thinking out of it, because that's how I would do it based on the way I would discover the relationships or the connections between the words. I want students to discover those relationships and connections. So I'm giving them the words, and they're going to make those on their own. Please don't spend your time trying to think of, oh, would these words go together? It does not matter if you think they go together. What matters are the students thinking about what's going together. This is problem solving. Lots of times teachers will tell me, I don't know how to teach problem solving. This is problem solving. When we take away some of the rules, when we take away some of the criteria and let them just think, that's problem solving. So these words I would give to the students and say, how many categories would you have? What would be the names of your categories? What words would go in those categories? Why did you pick those categories? And when they're doing those things, then they are looking for similarities and differences among the words or concepts, and they're going to learn more. Does that make sense to you? If you can let me know either through today's meet or the chat that I'm making sense, it would be helpful. I want to make sure that you understand, don't do the work for the students. Make them do the work, make them find the similarities, find the differences, make them make the connections between the words, because that's what's really important. Jessica says we're getting it, so I believe you, Jessica, so we're going to move forward. Here's another for identifying similarities and differences. Paint chips. Love paint chips. We love them because they're colorful. We like color, and color helps us to remember. So again, if you're teaching middle school, use the paint chips. If you're teaching 5-year-olds, use the paint chips. I use paint chips with adults. They seem to do well with them too. So the paint chips help us because color helps us to remember things. Now, what I would, if you look at the paint chip in the lower right-hand corner, it's the shades of green, okay? I put the words on there, and for me, those are 3 vocabulary words: mad, angry, livid. To me, livid is the most strongest word there. It's the most intense word, so I put it on the most intense color. Mad is the weaker of the 3, in my opinion, so I put it on the lightest color. And again, what am I doing? I'm figuring how these words are alike, how they're different. I'm evaluating them. I'm doing all kinds of things on Bloom's taxonomy. Then I throw it on color. It helps me to remember the vocabulary words even more. So use the paint chip for that. If you look for good, better, best, again, best is at a different level than is better or good, so it gets the most intense color. You can do opposites on the opposite of the paint chips. If you go to places like Lowe's or Home Depot or Menards, but I know some of you don't have Menards, Walmart, they all sell paint and they all have paint chips. If you ask them, they change all of those chips. Every one of them gets changed out twice a year. So if you tell them you want them, they will give those to you when they change them out. Don't go and steal them. That makes us look bad as Catholics. You don't want to do that, and it's Lent, so don't do that. But ask them for it. If you go to a small paint store, they may not change their colors as frequently. So, but ask, and they will just give them to you. And there's about 5 million things you can do with these paint chips. And again, color helps us to remember. So use it. And again, we're asking children to identify the connections between vocabulary words. It can be concepts, whatever. But it works really well for the concepts and the words that are similar but a little bit different. So with synonyms it works. With antonyms it works. I also work with math flashcards. They're very good. So the color is fun. Kids like it. It's a low-tech way to increase student engagement, to have them really identify how words are alike, how concepts are different. Okay, we're going to go to summarizing and note-taking. And last time I told you about an app that you can record with, and there are lots of them out there. So this is not any particular one I'm recommending here. But I'm saying go check to the stores, check out some apps, use whatever's on a phone, but there's no reason for us not to use the technology that is everywhere in order to help children take notes. Note-taking is different, so think about it. find an app that works. Some of them are free. They may let you do like 5 or 6 recordings and then you have to pay. But most of the times you're paying less than $10. Sometimes it's $1.99. So find one that works for you. There are many of them. They're all a little bit different, so you would have to figure out what works for you, and that's what we're encouraging you to do. But use technology for note-taking. There's no reason not to. Okay, don't have technology, don't have wireless, whatever. I can't do much with the technology. Okay, we'll get there. You will get there. You will all get technology one day, I promise. But let's talk about how you can take notes tomorrow. Well, the first thing you could do is you could provide an outline of the notes, and that can be done 2 ways. The first way, if you look at the circulatory system on your slide there, I just have the words, and the kids would write like definitions or notes about how the blood would move through the body. And I've provided the keywords. The opposite way is that you give them the content and they're going to write in the keywords. So if you have kids who don't write very well, that may work better, just write in the word. For some kids, they still need to write things, but you've given them something. You can also give them PowerPoint slides. I will hear from several of you that you wish you had the PowerPoint slides when I started. And if we could figure out a way to do that, we would do that, because many of you want to write on them as I talk through it. And we understand that. So understand that different people want to do different things with notes, and you can do that. You can also provide web pages. There's an app called SnapPen, S-N-A-P, capital P-E-N, SnapPen. And SnapPen allows you to write on web pages and then print them off, or save them as a web page so you can see your notes right on the page. It's a free app, so SnapPen is great. Kate, just so you know, a couple of people have lost audio. I'm trying very hard to talk into the microphone, because Kate told me last time I was moving, so I'm trying not to do that. So SnapPen is a great way, because you can write actually on the iPad on the web page and then print it off, so that works well. You can also give students a picture for note-taking, and that's probably the best thing in 2014, because our students are visual learners. They don't have to imagine what the inside of the body looks like. We can show them. We can give them a picture like this. They can write notes around it. Because our students are visual learners, this might be the best way in 2014 if you don't have the technology to let kids write on web pages, or you don't have technology to let them record things. So looking at this, this is probably the best way to do it. And no matter what you're doing, it seems like there are images available. So go get one, okay, and use it when you're trying to teach, because the pictures help. Our students really expect visual imagery. We've done it to them. We've put them in front of lots of digital media since they were very, very young, and they need the pictures. That helps. That's how they learn. Okay, so just to recap, we have identifying similarities and differences. We have the hula hoops. We have asking questions. We have using the paint chips, and we have finding connections and relationships between words, okay? 45% achievement game. Summarizing and note-taking, we talked about Twitter last time. We talked about using PowerPoint, making them summarize something in 2 PowerPoint slides. This time we're talking about using technology once again, and we're also talking about 3 different ways to take notes, where you give them the words, you give them fill in the blank, you give them web pages and SnapPen, PowerPoint slides, oops, I'm sorry, and then the pictures. So that's what we've done so far, okay? So if you can take a moment and either write in the chat box or something on today's meet, so that something that you might use that you've heard already. If you could just take a second to do that, because I want to give you a little reflection time, because I know it's good for you. I'm glad Jessica has the sound back. That's good. O'Connor has a question. He says, anybody have any good ideas for how to get students to retain notes, how to go back to them and use them to study for tests? One, I think if you have electronic folders for the notes, I think that's helpful, because sometimes it's about they can't put their hands on it physically. And the other thing is, if you can get them to use the notes during your class time. Like if they're working on groups to come up with the 3 ways to make your blood pump faster, your heart pump faster and the blood move more quickly through the body. And if they can use their notes to do that. If we make the notes something they use every day, it's going to help them, and they will start referring to them. They'll start thinking of them as more important. Right now, kids still tend to think of textbooks as more important. We have to get into their head. It's not about what's in the book, it's what about's on your notes. Your notes are the most important thing. Does anybody else have ideas? Because that's a very, very good question. Somebody said they want to work with Snapchat and Snap Pen too. You might think about that. Paint samples as an art teacher, another way to use them. Snap Pen. I'm planning on using PowerPoint slides tomorrow with my class to summarize the story. Excellent. Susan, thank you for using pictures. Using notes during class time, Connor says. Color helps us to remember, and if I want them to summarize, yeah, 2 slides is enough for summarization. I like 2 tweets. That's 280 characters. They really get good at it then. Okay, so we're ready to move forward to reinforcing effort and providing recognition. The first thing is that the research tells us that when children write their own goals, they do better. They learn more. So why not teach them how to write SMART goals? You know, the goals that are specific, they're measurable, they're attainable, they're relevant, and there's a time limit on them. Having children write their own goals will help them to reach their goals better, and it reinforces their effort. It helps to keep them motivated. Motivation is very hard to know what it is. It's very hard to motivate some students. And then effort, how do you measure effort? You know, if a kid sweats a lot, are they having more effort? And do we reward effort more than learning? It's questions to have, discussions to have around these questions, because they're really, really important questions. We have to make sure that we don't confuse effort with results, because there are children who get, I think, Connor, you and I had this conversation actually via today's meet, but there are some children who maybe get inflated grades. They haven't learned that much, but we want to reward them for their effort because we know how hard they work. And it's good to reward them, but sometimes then we're not really being truthful about what they've learned or not. So we have to be careful, and we have to figure out how to balance those 2 things, because I know too kids who just quit because they don't think they can do it, and they think they're going to get an F or a D no matter what. So we have to balance those 2 things out. But have students write their own goals for a week, for a day if they're really young, for a unit. What will I learn in this unit? What grade will I get in this unit? All the research shows when the kids write their own goals, they do better. I think the most important thing on this slide is to understand that recognition is important because it means they've really accomplished something. Kids know when everybody gets a trophy, they know it means nothing. Okay? They absolutely know it means nothing. So, in fact, my kids didn't even want those trophies when they were little. They were like, no. So you have to understand that recognition has to be for something that they consider a true accomplishment. The other thing is, ask your students who they want to tell when they do something well. It may not be mom or dad. It may be a teacher. It may be a friend. But ask them, who should we tell? You've done a great job. Who do you want to tell? If you're the principal and they want to tell you, you automatically have a good day. But sometimes we forget to ask them, but who do you want to share this good news with? As adults, when you get good news, who do you want to share it with? And it's very situational. If some good news you want to share with your mom, some your spouse, it's different people. So who do you want to tell when you do something good? We forget to ask kids that sometimes. And just by asking them who they want to tell, that makes what they've learned so much more important. So let's ask them, who do you want to tell that you did a great job? And then let them tell that person. You know, it's a good deal. It's a very good deal, and I think that we sometimes forget to ask the children, who do you want to tell? When they get to pick, it means more, so let them pick. Effort versus achievement. Connor remembers our conversation. He respectfully disagreed with me. I loved it. So who do they want to tell is important. Let's ask that question. And again, you know that, but sometimes we forget it because we don't stop and think about it. But that's important because who do they want to receive the recognition from? Maybe it's not you. I'm sorry, it might not be you, but maybe it's somebody else. And some days telling you and having you proud of them is all they need. So it's important, but we need to ask, who do you want to tell? Homework and practice. I'm changing up homework a little bit tonight. We talked a lot, the answer is, and the last time, and you guys give great answers, or have the students give the questions instead of the answers. And that's a great homework strategy. But tonight I'm going to concentrate on what parents can do with their children. And if you're teaching the AP courses, this is not going to apply to you as much, but I want you to think about it anyway. Because our church teaches that parents are the primary educators, and sometimes we forget that. And so I'm going to give you some ways to work with parents work with parents for your students. The first one are card games, and there are 2 slides of card games here. Share those with your parents. And homework is play cards with your kids. Play cards with your kids. Play board games with your kids. There's a lot of strategy, there's a lot of problem solving, and there's just good parent interaction. Turn off the TV for a half hour, everybody's going to play whatever. But there's 2 pages of math games here. It is important that children have practice with math. It is important that children spend time with their parents, and it is important that they have fun. So let's just take some time and tell parents this is one way you can help with your students at home. Another thing every parent can do is tell me one thing you learned today. That's a very powerful question. And don't let them get away with nothing. Tell the parents it's okay to say, I paid for something, you better have learned something. Let's make it about the kids learning. Let's talk about flashcards, and this is true of AP students or anybody. Yes, cribbage, that would be good. Flashcards are great when they're rectangles, but they're better when they're triangles. Again, we know that our brains remembers things in 3s more than they do in 1s or 2s. And again, it's about connections and relationships. So if you see the flashcard here, 2 plus 3 is 5. 3 plus 2 is 5, 5 minus 2 is 3, 5 minus 3 is 2. You see all those relationships there, all those connections? That's a better flashcard. So ask parents to use flashcards, but teach them to use triangle flashcards. Okay? Here's another way. Use it with vocabulary words. Again, they can write the definitions on the back. On the front, then they can tell how these words are related, how they're connected. It's for any subject matter. If you're doing Civil War, you could put Thomas Jefferson, or you could put Jefferson Davis. You could put Abraham Lincoln. You could put, Ulysses Grant. Those 3 men had prominent roles during the Civil War. How are they related? What are the connections? Again, our brain remembers things in 3 more than other things. So how can we use this knowledge to have students make flashcards and then maybe work with their parents on the flashcards? If we're doing Lent, what are the 3 things we remember in Lent? Almsgiving. What else are you thinking? No one's typing them in. Prayer. Almsgiving, prayer. What's the last one? I've given you 2 of the 3. You're thinking. Almsgiving. Prayer. No one's putting anything in. Come on, guys, you're Catholic. You need to help us out here. Almsgiving, prayer, and fasting. Somebody finally put it. Thank you. Oh, Kate did. Thank you, Kate. Oh, several people put fasting on the chat. Thank you. So put those 3 words on there. How are they related? How do they help us get to heaven? And put those 3 there. And again, do you need to know the connection, or do the students need to know the connection? It's about the students. So maybe they take that triangle home and they talk to their parents, and the parents and kids can write on it together. That's better homework, guys, and we're engaging parents and families in our student learning. And if you're teaching AP, then this is just a good study technique, because the brain remembers 3s better. That's what we know. Okay, another homework idea is the tic-tac-toe. And again, this is good for all grade levels too. So this is a little bit about RTI because you can definitely differentiate that. You can say, I want everyone to make an icon, okay, because I want them to write that paragraph. So I tell the students you have to do 3 in a row for your homework. It's due at the end of the week. You have a week to do 3 of them, and you have to go through the middle. So they still have choice. They have 2 diagonals, they have 1 vertical, and they have 1 horizontal. So they have 4 choices there because everybody has to go through the middle. You can say, you can make it so the 4 corners have really tough ideas, really tough assignments. And you can say to these 5 people who are really smart, you say, you guys have to do a diagonal. Now you know they're going to have 2 tough, challenging assignments. Could other people do diagonals? Absolutely. But you've controlled it so that the kids who need to be challenged have to do the diagonals, so you know they're going to have 2. They still have choice because they have 2 diagonals, but it gives them choice. Then when the parents say, I want more work, I want more practice for them, then you tell them you can do more. Anything else you do on there is extra credit. Anything else you do on there is more practice, whatever you want to make it to be. But you have 9 options on there, and you can get 3 assignments out of it. And I've had some people hand it back the next week and say, okay, now you have to pick a different 3 in a row. And so they use it for 2 weeks for homework. So think about it. Do whatever you want with it. But we have these on our website. We can make more of them. You guys can make some, share them with us. But a tic-tac-toe works well. And I see that Jamie has used them, and she said that the kids loved it for vocabulary ideas. Absolutely works for any subject. And again, it's helpful to you because if you're doing differentiation, it also serves as anchor activities, which is a good thing. It keeps you moving. Okay, non-linguistic representations. Our students are visual learners. I've already talked about this, okay? They are totally visual. So we know there's a spelling error on this. I'm going to say that right out in front. We'll get that fixed. But we at NCEA, we're figuring out that we need to put more things out in graphic forms. We're very good with words. We're all very linguistically gifted around here, or at least some of us are. I'm not, but some others are. So we're good with the words, but using pictures and graphics we're learning to do. So this is Pictograph. It's free. You can go online and use it, or better yet, your kids can go online. But have the students make a pictograph for whatever the concepts are, because they are non-linguistic learners. They really are. They depend on pictures. So let's talk about this, and this is one app that really works. They can always still draw the pictures. That's a good thing, and you're going to have to provide more pictures like I talked about with the notes, taking notes. But here's another app that you can use to help students. So if you're explaining something in whatever class, tell them, now put that into pictures. Make a graphic design to go with it. It's a good thing to do. Somebody said that we are thinking of using tic-tac-toe with our teachers as a way to improve instructional practice. That's a great idea. That's a great idea. Give teachers PD. You have to make a tic-tac-toe, teachers, and here are 9 professional development options. Make sure you include webinars with Kathy from NCEA on your tic-tac-toe. Okay, I'm done. But see how this is important, the pictograph, because our non-linguistic learners. Okay, cooperative learning. Let's review the rules for cooperative learning. 1, keep it short. Cooperative learning is not about the 3-week project. It can be, but that's not where to start, and I will tell you right now, you'll get more complaints about parents about that than you will anything. Cooperative learning is more about what happens in the classroom in 90 seconds or 5 minutes or short span times. Remember that the students have to report back what they heard, not what they said. If they just tell you what they said in the group, they were not cooperative. So they have to report back what they heard. And the most important thing is that you call the group back together when you hear somebody talking about lunch, because it's over. Now, some group is going to say to you, we're not done, and you're going to say, we're moving forward anyway. And because you can't put that one group ahead of everybody else in the classroom. And if you do, you're going to hate cooperative learning because everybody else is going to go berserk and you're going to have chaos and you're not going to want to do it again. That group will get faster, and students who are slower workers need to get faster because life is a little bit fast-paced, and we can split those students up so that we don't have a group where everybody is more methodical in their work. So split them up, put them out, because we're going to keep it short. And for adults, seriously, I just presented in Little Rock last week. I'm going to someplace in South Carolina, Hilton Head, South Carolina this week, and I promise you I will never give the adults more than 90 seconds because after about 65 seconds they start talking about what they're going to do that night. So if adults are that way, it's just the way everybody is. Kate has put the pictograph internet on the today's Meet site, so you have the web address, so thank you for doing that, Kate. Okay. Another thing to look at with cooperative learning, part of the reason we hate it is it takes too long to get the groups. So form the groups in advance. We also sometimes want them to do partners. We want them to go tell one person what they've learned. We want them to go read something with one person. So this is called season partners. It's very creative. And what you do is, as the principal or the teacher, you assign partners for 2 of the seasons or 3 of the seasons, and the kids get to pick for the other season. So Johnny and Mary are of like abilities, okay? So I want to know that whenever I call spring partners, all the partners are of like abilities. So on Johnny's sheet, I put Mary's name for spring, and on Mary's sheet, I put Johnny's name for spring. So when I say spring partners, Johnny and Mary will immediately go together, and I know that they are of like abilities. Then for winter partners, I know that Johnny and Stacy are totally different. They have different skills. They have different ways of looking at things. So when I want partners of different abilities together, I call my winter partners. And on Johnny's sheet, it says Mary for spring and Stacy for winter. And on Stacy's sheet, it says Johnny for winter. So when I call winter partners, Johnny and Stacy go together. Then you can have the kids figure out who their autumn and summer partners are. You can assign 3. These can last for 6 weeks. It can last for 2 weeks. It can last for a month. It can last for a semester. It can last as long as you want. I don't recommend a whole year because everybody needs a little variety. But you can use these partners. You can also use clocks, so you can go with your 3 o'clock partners, your 4 o'clock partners, whatever. The best one I like is when you use maps of South America with adults. I do that. They go crazy because they don't know any of the countries. And I say, go get with your Brazilian partner, and they don't know which Brazil is on their maps. It's wonderful. But I digress. But using maps is a good idea. If you're teaching 4th grade and you're doing states of the United States, then they can have an Indiana partner, a California partner, whatever it is. So think about using maps or seasons or whatever and assign partners, because if you take that part out of the cooperative learning, you will like it better because it'll be organized. Somebody said they've heard about teachers using compass points, north partners, south partners. That works too. So pick a system and use it because it takes time to find partners, and this takes all of that guesswork out of it. So do it. Yes, the clock partners, that's exactly right. You can have a 12 o'clock partner, a 6 o'clock partner. You can have 12 partners on a clock if you want. That's a little overkill for me, but other people, you guys handle it well. Cooperative learning. The last session, I will tell myself I had 2 3s. I don't know why, but I did. But now we seem to have them in order, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you put kids in groups of 4 or groups of 5. And every child in the group is a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Then you give them a question to answer and solve. And the kids get together and they find out what the best answer is. Then you say, I want the number 4s from the group to answer. And the 4s all have to answer. All the kids have to pay attention because they all have to give the answer of the group. And they don't know which number you're going to call on. So it's called numbered heads together. It works really well. And again, little Johnny, who doesn't ever want to say much because he's afraid he's going to be wrong, he can be group spokesman. He has to know what's going on because I might call his number. And it works really well. It works very well with adults. So if it works with adults, it'll work with your class, I promise you. It does hold everyone responsible for listening, and that is the beauty of it, because cooperative learning is about building listening skills. Okay, setting objectives and providing feedback. Do not forget about the KWL chart. It is old and it is effective. So setting objectives, we want kids to set their own goals. Sometimes we want to know what they know or what they think they know. And you have to look over this column because you may find out a lot of misconceptions. So what they think they know. And then what I want to know, that is like setting the objectives for you. If the kids say they want to know how many dogs can run 10 miles without stopping, why shouldn't we find that out? You know, let's research that. That's a good thing to know. So what they want to know is important because it should help feed into your setting of the objectives. Do you have certain things you want them to know about dogs? Absolutely. But why shouldn't they have some control, some say into what they're learning? And then the most important column, what I learned. And again, that's good homework. What did you learn about dogs? And does it match up with what you wanted to know? Is there something you wanted to know you still don't know? Let's match those up. So setting the objectives and providing feedback, we need to internalize that. This sheet helps starts that internalization process because they're checking their own objectives and providing their own feedback. Did I learn it? Did I not learn it? Good or not? Okay. The KWLs do make it more interested. And somebody says, my students are very versed in KWL. We use them for every subject. That's excellent. That's excellent. Like I said, it's old, but it's tried and true, and sometimes we just forget about it. But it works, again, for all age groups. If you want to, you can make one on your board or someplace in your room and use Post-it notes. And as kids learn things, they take off the Post-it note. And again, it's another way of doing the same thing that just interjects a little more fun, a little more excitement, because they're excited to go up. Once they've learned something they wanted to know, they get to take that Post-it note off, and it makes everybody happy. It's like making the check mark. Feedback needs to be specific, timely, and focused. And here's what happens. You get busy because you are busy people and you want a life. I don't know why, but you want a life. And so you don't get things back to them timely. Or you get them back to very hurried, so you just write a grade A, 87, 92. Or you just write good job, try harder. And it's not specific, it's not timely, and it's definitely not focused. It is better to write just one focused comment than to write something about the whole paper. So if you write one comment that says you need to practice using commas when you list things in a series, that is specific feedback. If you write nothing else on the paper and that's what you concentrate on, that's better feedback than good job or nice try, because that doesn't tell students anything. Doing that is kind of a waste of your time because you've not changed anything. And I'm giving you permission to be more specific and write less. Because if you try to write something about every mistake they've made or every great point they've made, you're going to, especially I'm thinking about English papers, that's almost like too much. It's overkill. So get it back to them as quickly as you can, but be very specific and very focused in your feedback that you give. Kids like one comment that makes sense to them than just a good job. They don't really care about the good job. It doesn't mean a thing to them. So let's give them some. Connor has given us a YouTube video to watch about feedback. Excellent. Thank you, Connor, for sharing that. We will watch that. I'm looking forward to it. Here's the other thing that we need to remember, and sometimes we don't, and this is feedback for you as teachers. Your mission is part of our church's mission for evangelization and catechesis. You guys are very important. So you need to keep that in mind, that the work that you do matters, the work that you do is important. You are there to educate the entire child, okay? You are there to educate the child's mind, body, and spirit. And that's important. And again, we lose track of what we're doing. We lose track of what we're supposed to be doing because we get really messed up and we don't give you the feedback that you need. But our goal, most importantly, is to get our students to heaven, and we have to remember that sometimes. So when you're giving feedback, the most important feedback you can give is feedback that helps to develop not only their mind, but their body and their soul, and because that makes a difference. And so your feedback comes from Pope Francis this week, because Pope Francis a week ago tweeted, you guys need to get on Twitter so you can read what Pope's saying about you, because he said, let us thank all those who teach in Catholic schools. Educating is an act of love. It is like giving life. That is really, really awesome. That's better than a lot of the things I've read on church documents on education. He said it so well. So that's your feedback today. It comes from the Pope, and Pope Francis says that he wants to thank you because educating our students is an act of love. It's like giving life. That is very powerful. So thank you for what you do. On behalf of the Pope, I'm sure he'd want me to speak for him. I have no doubt about that at all. Okay, Kate's laughing next door. Generating and testing hypotheses. First of all, that's not just for science anymore. We want students to ask why. We want them to question. We want them to test their theories. The new question is not what do you want to be when you grow up. The new question is what problem do you want to solve? That changes everything. When you grow up, what problems do you want to solve? Because truthfully, we have no idea what jobs these kids will have because who knows? Many of the jobs that exist now did not exist 5 years ago. So what problems do you want to solve when you grow up, kids? It's a great question. And I will tell you right now, I am just learning about this. This is the digital Bloom's taxonomy, but it's taking all of those things that we've talked about previously and putting them together, and it's taking it to a higher level. It's helping kids to test hypotheses. Technology is a wonderful tool for doing this, and we're looking at what Benjamin Bloom has said about learning and taking it to the 21st century. This comes to us from Australia. I believe it's Australia. Now my mind just went blank. I shouldn't have said that, but I think it's Australia. And they're looking at how do we use technology to improve learning, to increase learning. Technology for technology's sake does nothing for us. But technology that engages learners, that engages our students, that increases learning, we need to be involved in. So this is one thing that I'm still studying, and I give it to you not as an answer, but as something for you to study too. I think it's very interesting, and I don't know what everything is or how everything would work. I'm still learning, so I want you to learn with me, and I'm sure at some point we're all going to have to talk about the Bloom's taxonomy that is all about digital learning. Digital literacy is a big deal nowadays, and sometimes I don't know that I'm literate enough to be doing what I'm doing, and I keep working at it because it's a job to be digitally literate in this day and age. It's a job because I probably use 5% of what I could do on my phone. So that frustrates me at times. I'm just determined to get better, and using it for school, I am in awe and amazement of you teachers because you're doing so many wonderful things. Share it with me because I want to share it with the rest of the Catholic school teachers of the world. If you don't get my newsletter, let me know because we have great teachers writing great articles for you. If you have an article to share, then please do so because we would love to share it. I'm thinking several of you have articles in you just judging by today's meet. So I don't know your email addresses or I'd ask you. So tell me that, yeah, you have something to share. Okay, question, cues, and advanced organizers. And I think the most important part here is questions. What questions do we ask children to reflect upon? What questions do we ask children, period? Kids like to think. Sometimes I get a little amused when I present. People say, oh, it was great, it was wonderful. And what I really do when I present is just ask people to think. I just ask the questions and ask you to think. And teachers are so excited about being given the opportunity to think. It's a wonderful day. It is truly great. So kids like to think as much as anybody, and sometimes we don't understand that. They don't like to do papers, but they like to think. So we need to make sure that we ante up on our questioning. Are we doing the best we can here? These are some questions that we need to think about. And the reason we do is I read a very short article by Marzano, and it's kind of a private article. And it was sent to me by one of his students, and it hasn't been published, so I can't really share too much more with you. But in it, Marzano says that a lot of this stuff that he's put out in this book that was published in 2001, Classroom Instruction That Works, he doesn't know if it's true anymore. And here's why. Because he says everything has changed so much because of technology in the last 5 years. Kids' brains are being rewired differently than the kids' brains that were used when he did his research. So how does that impact it? And does all of these strategies work the same in all the different areas of learning and content? And what he's saying is maybe when we get to this questions, cues, and advanced organizers, it's about teaching children how to organize their brains. Maybe the advanced organizer is their brain. And I'm very intrigued by it, and I hope he writes more about it. And when he comes to NCEA, if I get 5 minutes alone with him, I'm going to ask him. Although he would then ask me where I got the article, and then somebody might get in trouble, so maybe I won't, but I probably will. But we need to look at this. These are the questions. What did you learn? We forget to ask that. We need to do that. That's why the KWL chart's great. How did you know you learned it? Yeah, that's really important. How do you know that you learned it? Because if they know how they learned it, they can replicate that process. What got in the way of your learning? You didn't learn it. Why didn't you learn it? What do we need to do differently? What helped your learning? Important question. How do you feel when you learned? Who do you want to share that with? Who do you want to tell? And then how do you feel when you don't learn something? You know, how quickly do you get frustrated? How can we increase your persistence? Because we need to do all these things. But if Marzano's right and the advanced organizer is the child's brain and how they handle all this information in 2014, then we have to give that some due consideration. And you know what? It goes along with Catholic teaching, because Catholic teaching says we have to worry about the whole child, and I really think that's what Marzano's saying with this work that he's doing now. Here's the other thing. I think that we need to have our children have learning journals, and I think they probably should look like blogs in 2014. I think, you know, you asked about notes, Connor. You know, if they have a learning blog that they can go back to, this is what I learned, this is what I need to keep working on, that's kind of like notes too. So I think that we need to have our children write every day what they've learned, what they still want to know, what they want to learn tomorrow, because I think that will help them a lot. And I think it goes back to what Marzano's saying, is helping them to organize their brains. The children have never had so much information thrown at them ever. So let's talk about that, and how do we help them to organize that. So Terry says, are these question cues and advanced organizers congruent with the Common Core standard? Is that the primary purpose for them? I don't know. He does not mention Common Core standards, and I certainly didn't think Common Core standards. So I don't know, Terry. I will tell you I wasn't thinking that way, but I don't know if, I don't know. It wasn't in the article I was reading, so I don't know. There might be a relationship. Let me think about that, and others, please contribute either in the chat box or with today's meet. Good question. Connor said learning blogs are good for the individual student as well as a whole class blog. I agree. You know, parents, go look, see what we're learning every day, see what your kids are learning. I think a blog is something we need to utilize more. I think it could really help with parent communication, and that would help us in the long run. Terry, you still have me thinking about your question. Here is an advanced organizer that goes to the reflection part. When we take times to stop and reflect about what we're learning, our brain takes that moment to build stronger dendrites, stronger connections in our brain. We need to give our brain a chance and opportunity to do that. It's a quiet moment to think, what did I learn? To just stop and think. Not complete a paper, not do anything, but just stop and think. Here's ways you can do it. You can use the square, the circle, the triangle, one thing that you loved about learning today. I want you guys to pick one of those things and write it on today's meet or in the chat box. So just take a moment and think, all the stuff that she's been talking about for the last 50 minutes, what is it? What have I learned here? And write it down on today's meet or the chat box. Connor says kids should do more of most of the work. I agree. I don't know, somehow everybody's convinced the teacher they have to do the work. Give kids choices makes a lot of sense. Everybody likes choice. That's why we have salad bars. Triangle flashcards. Oh, Laura, you're working with children with disabilities. It will definitely help. It will definitely help. Give it time. It's not going to be like the miracle overnight, but it will work over time. Questioning more in the classroom. You will be a better teacher, Christine, if you ask deeper questions, questions that really make them think. Yes, and we absolutely have to be that whole child, body, mind, and spirit. Yep. And as the Pope says, when you do that, you're very holy people. Let the kids think. Don't give them as much information. Good. Absolutely. Okay, we're going. Thank you for participating. I appreciate that. So we have a poll here. Okay. So could you please answer A, B, C, or D? We'll just give you about 10 seconds to do it, but you're going to use these strategies in the next few days, in the next few weeks, sometime before Easter, or sometime whenever. As Kate says, before Christmas. Mark says, emphasizing visual learning and cooperative group work. It will change your life, Mark. And Jess, I think that's Jessica, or maybe it's a different person. Jess says, as a tech teacher, I love student learning blogs. I do too. She likes thinking about the recorded learning is helpful for looking back. I think that's true. Creative way for notes. Okay, what did you guys say? 63% of you are going to do one in the next few days. Hooray, that's good. 29 in the next few weeks, and somebody said they love the technology ideas. I'm trying to get better at that. My Twitter friends are helping me. And 9% said they'll do one before Easter. Well, that's a good goal. You have 6 weeks of Lent ahead of you. So give up one of your old strategies for Lent and replace it with one of these new strategies, okay? It's Lent. Give up something old and do something new. I hope you'll join us on Catholic Ed Chat on Twitter on Saturday mornings. If you're not on Twitter, you're missing out on the Pope. He tweets every morning. I look at it before I get out of bed. So think about joining Twitter and joining us on Catholic Ed Chat. Thank you for participating. We really appreciate it. Today's meet will be available for about a year. So go back, ask questions, or just email me, and we're glad to speak with you. Thank you very much, guys. Have a great evening. And Carol, if you're still drinking wine, cheers.
And thank you all again for your time this evening. This concludes today's Implementing Research-Based Instructional Strategies webinar. We appreciate your time and invite you to visit our website at ncea.org to view the schedule of future webinar topics.